0786 10 11 12. It is gone 7:30 on Radio 786. A very good morning. Welcome to this Thursday. It is indeed the 9th of September, and it's panning out to be a lovely morning. In fact, the temperatures are peaking closer to 30 degrees today, so it's the first warmest day in the last couple of weeks, I suppose, that we'll be having here in Cape Town. So dress the part and hope that's certainly going to have a lovely day today. Okay, let's now talk about climate change, and particularly climate change in relation to the continent. Africa is indeed the world's richest mineral continent. However, the dire impact of climate change is taking its toll on the continent at large. According to a recent report coordinated by the World Meteorological Organization, it found that climate change is contributing to a surge in food insecurity and threatening the health and the safety populations and socio-economic development. While Africa boasts the richest natural minerals, it has been plagued by food insecurity that has ultimately led to poverty for the last few decades. How can we change the perspective on climate change in Africa for the better? For more on this, we're now joined by Tshiamo Moleele, from a master's candidate in petroleum geology at UWC. Very good morning and welcome to Radio 786.
Good morning.
Thank you for being with us. How do we understand climate change in Africa comparable to climate change to the rest of the world? Is there any different approach or understanding, perspective that is required for Africa?
Thank you so much for having me. I think there is a big difference because the issues that arise in terms of climate change, these are issues that we're currently facing in Africa. So telling people that what will happen in the future is worse than their present state, that's where the difference comes in. And then when we talk about this climate change perspective, when we introduced this concept at the workshop, what we tried to do was we tried to bring this concept so that people can start having a conversation about it, so that they are aware that there is a difference in terms of how the rest of the world views climate change and how we view climate change. So we used just very general science to help them understand it. And then one thing that's very important in terms of understanding this is that there's ethical questions that are involved in this conversation, because climate change, and in Africa there's a lot of people that are affected from different cultures and beliefs, so there is a discussion that needs to happen there.
Yeah, because in Africa already to begin with, there are poorer infrastructure, more poorer people, more hungry people, etc. And the classic definition, I suppose, of climate change would be the alteration in temperature, climate, weather patterns, etc. And given, I suppose, that sort of outlook, where do you think on the spectrum of where Africa is at and where the rest of the world is at, do we fit in? Do you think that we in a scenario at the moment where we're already in the swing of climate-related events, in the type of storms, flooding that we've seen, even fires on the continent, etc., the drought that happened here in Southern Africa? Are these examples, climatic events that are significant to climate change?
Yeah, so you're right. Like, climate change is the things that are happening in Africa, such as forest deforestation. There's a lot of landslides happening, flooding, and all those things. Those are things that are caused naturally by climate change, and those are things that we seem to be experiencing in Africa. But then the purpose of the workshop, and when we talk about Africa, is not is to recognize that we are already experiencing these things. We're already experiencing rising temperatures. We're already experiencing rising in sea levels, and then so for us is to educate the students, and then so that they can be part of the conversation, so that they are aware that these things are happening right now. So it's more of a, it's not like there's no right or wrong answer of saying this is what you should do. So it's more of being cognizant and being aware of this is what the problem is and where do I fit in the problem. And then a lot of times it's the thing of like we are not educated about it. So if you don't know what the problem is, you don't have the right tools to fix it. So we start I'm going to call it the foundation blocks of understanding climate climate change as a whole and where we are on an African level. And then from there on, then we hope and that the students can go ahead and learn more about it. Like, for example, with the COP26 that's happening right now. So this, things like that are a good platform to further their understanding of how they can fix the problem that's currently happening in Africa as we speak.
Yeah. And that COP26 highly controversial because as I was hearing just yesterday that there's been some call for it to be suspended given that certain delegates from developing nations may not be able to participate because of COVID and the restrictions, etc. But the UK government, as I understand it, has now made some provision for delegates from the red list countries to be allowed, including making accommodation available in quarantine sites for those delegates. And so they want COP26 to proceed. I thought I'll just give that as a matter of information. How does climate change impact the security of food production on the continent?
I think it impacts us very severely because there's going to be a big amount of agricultural productivity decline because of the rising temperatures that's going to affect the condition of the soil, that's going to affect organic matter, that's going to affect just biodiversity in general. So there is a big impact that we're going to see. So the stability of food in the next few years is going to be very questionable.
Yeah. And so why then is it, I suppose, important to have a change in perspective on this? And what sort of change in perspective? Because, I mean, African countries, or let's say the developed world, both in the Americas and the African continent, have been making the point that it's precisely at places like the COP that, developed nations need to play their part in slowing down their economies and providing the necessary funds to assist in economies such as Africa, to assist in particularly responding to climate change. So why do you think it is indeed important to have some change in perspective on this issue?
I think it's very important to have a perspective change in terms of sustainability. So if you have this perspective change, then you're going to change how you do things. And if you change how you do things, then the generations that will come will benefit from the loveliness that we get from the earth right now. So and then you made a good point in terms of how the Western countries should slow down, so to speak. But I think what I think should be best is then they should assist us, because in terms of alleviating food security, we need availability of it, we need access to it, and then we need utilization and stability. And then as a developing country itself, you have the availability of it, but then you need utilization and stability, and that stability comes from the Western countries helping us.
Okay, and I think that's important to spur those conversations in those different workshop spaces, but also at places like COP26 that is happening at the moment in the United Kingdom. Thank you very much for having joined us this morning on a very important conversation for the continent, that is climate change. Tshiamo Moleele, Master's Candidate in Petroleum Geology Unit at UWC, the University of the Western Cape. 21 minutes before 8 o'clock.
Radio 786 weather.
Polokwane has